Please like and subscribe for more content of this nature. The waning summer sun descended, painting the urban structures in shades of gold and pink. Chloe Harper, 28 years old, stood on her apartment's balcony, her reddish-brown hair moving with the breeze as she consumed a chilled beverage. Her fifth-floor dwelling in the aged brick building served as her refuge, a disorganized sanctuary filled with scattered paint containers, unfinished artworks, and the faint aroma of paint thinner. She was sketching the city outline, her pen moving across a pad, attempting to capture the dynamic vitality of the metropolis. However, her concentration faltered, her thoughts drifting to the individual across the corridor, Henry Caldwell, her neighbor, whose calm power and penetrating blue eyes had been occupying her mind for several months. Chloe had observed Henry, 62 years old, on the day she relocated. His silver hair, cut short, and his aged but striking facial features had surprised her, as had his deep "Welcome to the residence, Chloe," delivered with a nod and a grin that caused her internal organs to flutter. She had attempted to suppress her attraction, dismissing it as a trivial infatuation. He was her adjacent resident, older by many decades, a retired architectural designer with a life she could only speculate about. But every polite corridor conversation, every instance he held the entrance with that steady gaze, eroded her determination. She was resolved to conceal it, until this evening. She was engrossed in her drawing when she perceived the familiar sound of Henry's entrance across the corridor. Her heart performed an unexpected leap, and she maintained her focus on her pad, feigning unawareness as he stepped onto his balcony, merely a few feet away, separated by a low metallic barrier. He held a glass of crimson liquid, his checkered garment unfastened at the neck, revealing a hint of bone that Chloe attempted, and failed, not to observe. "Good evening, Chloe," he uttered, his vocalization a warm deep tone, like a string instrument sound that lingered in the atmosphere. "Still pursuing evening light?" Her heart rate accelerated, and she glanced at him, a smile forming on her lips. "Good evening, Henry." Attempting to, at least. "This one is being unyielding." She presented her drawing pad, displaying a partially formed city outline, hoping her vocalization sounded more stable than she felt. He leaned against the barrier, his vision shifting to her drawing, then back to her. "Unyielding is beneficial. It implies it possesses something to communicate." His gaze lingered, steady and penetrating, with a hint of a grin that made her feel exposed. "You possess a talent for making the world appear vibrant." Her facial skin warmed, surprised by the sincerity in his vocal tone. "You are excessively kind," she stated, placing a strand of hair behind her ear, conscious of how his vision followed the movement. "It is merely a drawing. Nothing extraordinary." Henry's grin deepened, causing lines at the corners of his vision. "Nothing extraordinary? I do not accept that. You do not perform anything incompletely." Chloe. The manner in which he articulated her name, deliberate and warm, sent a tremor down her spinal column. She had spent months maintaining her attraction concealed, cordial greetings, brief discussions about the atmospheric conditions, nothing to reveal the way her heart accelerated when he was nearby. But his utterances, his gaze, made it more challenging to feign. "Be cautious, Henry," she playfully warned, grasping her pen more firmly. "You will cause me to believe you are paying excessive attention." He chuckled, a low sound that warmed her like the celestial body. "Perhaps I am. Is that an issue?" Her respiration paused, and she returned her attention to her drawing, her hand moving more rapidly, as if concentration could conceal the redness ascending her neck. "No issue," she stated, her vocalization lighter than she felt. "Just do not anticipate me to commence illustrating you next." His laughter was gentle, playful. "Now there is a concept." The atmosphere between them intensified, charged with something unexpressed. Chloe's heart pulsated, her carefully protected secret threatening to escape. She should have altered the topic, entered indoors, maintained things secure. But instead, she remained, caught in the allure of his gaze, wondering if he could perceive the reality she was striving so diligently to conceal. The subsequent morning, Chloe awoke to the recollection of Henry's grin, her nocturnal visions intertwined with depictions of his hands, his vocalization, the manner in which he had leaned closer on the outdoor area. She dismissed it, attributing it to too many late-night artistic sessions, and proceeded to the postal receptacle. There, on her entrance mat, was a small paper container with a message. Observed these at the marketplace. Believed they would complement your artistic range. Inside were liquid pigment pens, vibrant and superior quality, the type she had desired but never justified acquiring. Her heart skipped, and she glanced at Henry's entrance, half expecting him to materialize. He did not, but the gesture lingered as she proceeded to the exhibition space, her mind a flurry of azure and silver tones, all inspired by him. Work was busy, the art gallery getting ready for a big show of local artists. Chloe was overwhelmed, arranging artworks and calming a difficult sculptor, but Henry's note was a constant distraction. Her colleague Mia, always observant, spoke to her during a coffee break. "You're radiant," Mia said, smiling over her coffee. "What's making you so unfocused? Or rather, who?" Chloe laughed, dismissing the comment. "Just excited about the exhibition. Many hours, you know?" Mia's eyes narrowed. "Right. This wouldn't involve your neighbor, would it? The attractive older man across the hall?" Chloe's face flushed. "Henry? He's just friendly. He brought over some art supplies this morning." "That's all art supplies?" Mia's smile broadened. "Oh, he's clever. Be careful, Chloe. Men like that know how to charm you." "He's just being kind," Chloe insisted, but her words felt unconvincing. She'd spent months telling herself Henry was forbidden, a harmless infatuation she could ignore. But the pencils, the message, his voice, it was all breaking down her resolve. That evening, she was back on her balcony, trying out the watercolor pencils, blending blues and golds into a sunset that felt full of potential. Henry appeared, as if summoned, holding a book, his gray sweater making his eyes appear bluer. "Testing out the present?" he asked, leaning against the divider, his voice warm. "Yes," she said, holding up her drawing, the colors bold and vivid. "These are amazing, Henry." "You didn't have to." He shrugged, his smile relaxed. "I saw them and thought of you. I figured you'd create something beautiful with them." Her heart beat faster, and she put the pad down, needing to move. "You're going to make me blush," she said, half joking, but her voice trembled slightly. His eyes softened, with a hint of playfulness. "I wouldn't mind seeing that. You have a glow when you're flustered." Chloe, her breath hitched, and she laughed to hide it, turning to face the city. "Your trouble," she said, gripping the railing. "You know that, right?" "Only the good kind," he replied, stepping closer, his arm brushing hers as he leaned beside her. The contact was brief but electrifying, and neither moved away. "You're not exactly innocent yourself, you know." Her heart pounded, and she glanced at him, captivated by the intensity in his gaze. "Me? I'm just drawing sunsets," she said, her voice playful but her insides in turmoil. His smile was slow, deliberate. "I'm sure you are. But I'm betting there's more happening in your mind." The moment lingered, heavy with potential. Chloe's secret, the attraction she'd hidden under polite smiles, was on the verge of being revealed. She should have stepped back, but her feet remained still, drawn to his warmth, the promise of something more. The next day, Chloe's nerves were on edge as she prepared for a gallery meeting, but her thoughts kept returning to Henry. His gift, his words, the way he seemed to see through her defenses. She was sketching during a break, lost in a swirl of blues and silvers inspired by his eyes, when something went wrong. A gust of wind swept through her open balcony door, sending her sketchpad flying to Henry's side. Her stomach dropped as she leaned over the divider, spotting the pad open to a page she hadn't intended for anyone to see, a charcoal sketch of Henry, his profile drawn with care, his eyes capturing the quiet strength she couldn't stop thinking about. Her secret, revealed. Before she could climb over, Henry's door opened, and he stepped out, the sketchpad in his hand. He paused, his eyes flicking to the open page, and Chloe's heart sank. "Oh, God," she said, her voice a mix of panic and embarrassment. "Henry, I'm so sorry." "The wind." He held up a hand, his smile slow and knowing. "No apologies needed," he said, his voice low, almost teasing. He stepped closer, holding out the pad but not letting go, his eyes locking onto hers. This is me, huh? Her cheeks burned, and she reached for the pad, but he pulled it back slightly, his grin widening. I was just messing around, she stammered, her heart pounding. It's not. It's good, he said, cutting her off, his voice softer now, his gaze intense. Really good. And telling. She swallowed, caught in the weight of his stare. You weren't supposed to see that, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. His smile softened, and he handed her the pad, his fingers brushing hers, lingering just a moment too long. Maybe I was, he said, his voice a low rumble. Maybe I've been hoping you'd let me see more of you. Her breath caught, the air between them electric. Her attraction was out, laid bare, and instead of pulling away, Henry was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world. Henry, she said, her voice shaky, this is complicated. Complicated's not always bad, he said, stepping closer, his hand resting lightly on the divider. Sometimes it's just real. She laughed, a nervous sound, clutching the sketchpad to her chest. You're too good at this, she said, trying to keep it light. Making me feel like I'm not crazy for whatever this is. His eyes held hers, warm and steady. You're not crazy, Chloe. And you're not the only one feeling it. Her heart raced, her dangerous desires no longer hidden but alive, pulsing in the space between them. She should have stepped inside, closed the door, kept things safe. But instead, she smiled, a small, daring thing. Good night, Henry, she said, stepping toward her door, her voice soft but charged. Good night, Chloe, he replied, his smile promising more. But I'll see you tomorrow. Over the next week, Henry became a constant in Chloe's life, slipping into her days with an ease that both thrilled and unnerved her. He'd knock on her door with a fresh loaf of bread from the bakery downstairs, claiming he'd bought too much. They'd share coffee on their balconies, their conversations weaving between art, life, and the unspoken pull between them. Every glance, every brush of his hand, passing a mug, adjusting her scarf, sent her pulse racing. One evening, Henry invited her to the building's rooftop, a shared space with string lights and a view of the city that took her breath away. Thought you might find some inspiration up here, he said, leading her to a small table with 2 glasses of wine and a plate of cheese and fruit. You're spoiling me, she teased, settling into a chair, her heart fluttering as he sat across from her, his flannel shirt rolled up to reveal strong forearms. Someone's gotta, he said, his voice low, his eyes catching hers in the soft light. You work too hard, Chloe. You need to let yourself breathe. She laughed, sipping her wine. And you're the expert on breathing, huh? He leaned forward, his elbow brushing hers on the table. I've had a few decades to practice. Learned a thing or two about what matters. Her breath caught, and she looked out at the city, needing a moment to steady herself. And what matters to you, Henry? He paused, his gaze steady. Moments like this. Good company. Someone who sees the world the way you do. Her cheeks warmed, and she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, aware of his eyes on her. You're dangerous, she said, half laughing, half serious. You make it hard to keep things simple. His smile was slow, knowing. Simple's overrated. I'd rather have real. The rooftop moment stretched, the city lights blurring as the space between them shrank. Chloe's heart raced, her secret no longer a secret, and Henry's quiet intensity made her want to lean in, to let her desires take over. But she held back, just barely, clinging to the safety of the moment. The following day, Chloe threw herself into her gallery work, hoping the chaos of the upcoming exhibit would drown out her thoughts of Henry. But he was everywhere, in the blue of a painting that matched his eyes, in the steady strength of a sculpture that reminded her of his presence. When she got home, she found another note slipped under her door, saw a sunset that made me think of your sketches. Keep shining, Chloe. H. Her heart swelled, and she smiled, putting the note into her journal. That evening, she invited him to the gallery for a private tour, a spontaneous decision that felt bold. Thought you might like to see what I do, she said over the phone, her voice playful. I wouldn't miss it, he replied, his tone warm. When he arrived, dressed in a tailored blazer that made him look unfairly handsome, Chloe felt her resolve weaken. She guided him through the exhibit, explaining the pieces, a mix of bold abstracts and delicate watercolors, her voice steady but her heart racing. Henry listened, his questions thoughtful, his gaze never straying far from her. This one's my favorite, he said, pausing before a vibrant abstract, all reds and golds. It's got your fire in it. She blushed, stepping closer. You see fire in everything I do, don't you? He turned to her, his eyes intense. Because it's there, Chloe. You just don't let everyone see it. Her breath caught, and she laughed to cover it. You're going to get me in trouble, she said, her voice playful but her insides in knots. He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers as he gestured to the painting. Maybe you're already there. The gallery was quiet, the only sound their breathing and the faint hum of the city outside. Chloe's heart pounded, her attraction laid bare, and Henry's steady presence made it impossible to hide. She should have stepped back, but instead, she let her hand linger near his, the space between them electric. The next week was a blur of stolen moments, coffee on the balcony, shared laughs over a book he lent her, a late-night chat on the rooftop about their favorite cities. Each interaction was a spark, building the tension until it felt like a physical weight. One evening, Chloe was painting in her loft, the canvas alive with blues and silvers, when Henry knocked, holding a bottle of wine and a grin. Thought you might need a break, he said, stepping inside, his presence filling the space. She laughed, setting down her brush. You're going to make me an alcoholic at this rate. Only the good stuff, he said, pouring 2 glasses. They sat on her couch, the city lights visible through the window, and the conversation turned personal, the flirtation bolder. You're not what I expected, she admitted, sipping her wine, her eyes on his. I thought you'd be quieter. More reserved. He leaned closer, his knee brushing hers. And I thought you'd be harder to crack. But you're not running, Chloe. Why is that? Her heart skipped, and she set her glass down, needing to steady herself. Maybe I like the challenge, she said, her voice playful but honest. His smile was slow, dangerous. Good. Because I'm not done challenging you. They stayed there, talking until the wine was gone, the tension a tightrope they both walked. When he stood to leave, he paused at the door, his hand resting on the frame, his eyes locking onto hers. Your trouble, Chloe Harper, he said, his voice low, teasing. She laughed, stepping closer, her heart pounding. Says the man who keeps showing up with wine and compliments. His grin widened, and he leaned down, his face inches from hers. Careful. You're making it hard to stay neighborly. Her breath caught, and she smiled, a daring thing. Maybe I don't want neighborly. His eyes darkened, a spark of something new in them. Good to know. The following evening, they were back on the balcony, the city quiet below them. Chloe was sketching, Henry reading beside her, the silence comfortable but charged. When she dropped her pencil, he reached for it, their hands brushing, and neither pulled away. The contact was a spark, igniting the air between them. Chloe, he said, his voice low, turning to face her. I'm not just here for the sunsets. You know that, right? Her heart stuttered. I suspected. He reached out, his fingers grazing her wrist, light but deliberate. Excellent, because I am not skilled at feigning disinterest in something I desire, and I wish to understand you, truly understand you, she gulped, her voice wavering. You are problematic, Henry, perhaps, he responded, his thumb gently circling her wrist. But you are not fleeing, that must signify something, she did not flee. She did not withdraw. Instead, she embraced the moment, the warmth of his contact, the potential for something deeper. Her perilous longings were revealed, and Henry's reaction was an inferno she could not disregard. The following morning, Chloe discovered a package outside her entrance, a collection of paintbrushes, superior in quality and perfectly weighted, accompanied by a message, for the artist who is not afraid to experience emotions. Continue to radiate, Chloe. H. She smiled, her fingers tracing the message, her heart expanding. Henry was indeed problematic, but the kind of problem that inspired her to paint, to exist, to take risks. And as she placed the brushes next to her canvas, she was certain of one thing: whatever unfolded next, it would be a work of art.